Hi everyone, I am Cornelius of Voice Studio East, and this is my second Q&A on complete vocal technique. Our first question today comes from GG Bond, who asks, does putting the tongue too close to the palate of your mouth block the vocal tract when we are practicing edge? It definitely can, but I think this is an area where the range you are singing in matters a lot. In the lower range, or more specifically, the part sometimes known as the speech inflection range, edge benefits a lot from the tongue being very close to the palate of your mouth. In the upper range, however, it helps a lot to add some space between the tongue and palate, as this will tend to make the pharynx narrow instead, which is generally desirable when singing in the high range. GG Bond also asks, why do I put my fingers behind my front teeth to practice my jaw back? It's uncomfortable next to my ears. Is that normal? Well, this is an area where I'm actually in disagreement with what CVT teaches. To achieve the maximum range of motion with the jaw, you need a slight protrusion. Trying to prevent this slight protrusion while still opening the mouth fully is likely to cause a sudden popping or jerking motion of the jaw that can lead to temporomandibular joint dysfunction. Observing this, some vocal pedagogues argue that singers should refrain from opening their mouths more than the approximate width of 2 fingers. But in addition to being difficult to adhere to in practice, this creates various undesirable limitations when it comes to registration and, for that matter, drama. So instead, it is far better to simply make a habit of slightly protruding the jaw when you need to open it a lot. I have linked a website in the description that gives a fairly detailed description of how the jaw moves. T. Phalange asks, some coaches advocate the narrowing of the vowels when singing high in mixed voice or cupping. I know you have covered this a bit in your resonance series, but can you explain a bit more what this achieves and whether it contradicts CVT's suggestions? Not only does this not contradict CVT's suggestions, it is actually the essential function of directing vowels towards R for use with cupping. This vowel modification is used because it prevents yell timbre and because it centralizes the vowels, thus directing them away from edge and overdrive. It also often results in a perceived narrowing of the sound, a loss of width. This is presumably why it is often described as a narrowing of the vowels, though physiologically it can just as well be a broadening or opening of the vowels, depending on what vowel you started out with. CVT is describing the same modification, but in a somewhat more precise way and prescribing it only for curbing, whereas many coaches seem to treat it as the only correct way of singing high in pitch. T. Phalange further asks, does the nasal cavity also play a part in resonance tuning? Why is it often necessary to raise the palate or close the nasal port when singing high in fuller density for a metallic sound? There is not much that can be done to change the resonant frequencies of the nasal cavity, so it is of quite limited utility in resonance tuning. We can of course influence them a little by raising or lowering the larynx and narrowing the epiglottic funnel, but the more significant role it plays is to simply even out the distribution of resonant frequencies across the pitch spectrum and absorb some sound from the rest of the vocal tract, effectively diminishing the overall impact of resonance tuning. This is also why closing the nasal port is helpful for metallic singing. We need the strong resonance tuning in order to produce a powerful metallic sound, so nasality will tend to somewhat reduce the metal in the sound. Also, as a matter of speech psychology, an open nasal port is associated with mumbling and slurred speech, which tends to automatically create the aforementioned modification associated with cupping. So, there is a strong tendency to go into reduced density when opening the nasal port, but it is of course also possible to do so while remaining in fuller density. Sai Chu asks, how do I speed up my vibrato and make it narrower? Alternating between 2 notes and increasing the tempo has yielded limited results thus far. Well, from the description of your approach so far, it sounds like you are using laryngeal vibrato, which is naturally a slower type of vibrato. If you want a faster vibrato, I recommend repeatedly accenting a note at increasing tempos rather than alternating between two pitches, like this. Doing this will lead to pulse vibrato, which tends to be faster than laryngeal vibrato. Sai-Chu also asks, what is highway and byway? Is it just a transition between fuller density and reduced density? Felt like it wasn't explained that well in the app. Strictly speaking, highway and byway refer to two ways of doing volume transitions. Highway being when you stay in fuller density, even for the softer volumes, and byway being when you transition to reduced density during the reduction in volume. However, the term byway has come to be used synonymously with reduced density, so that, for example, edge in reduced density is sometimes referred to as a byway edge. Minx Yo asks, when are times singers use flageolet? The term flageolet has been deprecated from complete vocal technique, having been replaced with falsetto to be more in line with standard terminology. There are a number of ways you can recognize falsetto, most notably by voice cracks, but also by the inability to produce metal in falsetto and by the comparatively agile and floaty qualities characteristic of falsetto. And that's about it for this Q&A. If you have any more questions, be sure to leave them in a comment below. Stay tuned, remember to like and subscribe for more content, and as always, thanks for watching.